But I got to go back. I know everyone has talked about this and is talking about it, but it's just so important. And I want to talk about the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade just one more time to tell you what it means to me, who's not a lawyer, who's not really even a political person, who's an artistic person, who cares about the culture of this country, because I think when we say that politics is downstream from culture, as Andrew Breitbart liked to say, we don't mean that if you make a movie, then something's going to happen. And what we mean is that all these things, the way people behave, the way they think, the way their media speaks to them, the way they speak to one another, the movies, the arts, all of those things create a soul of the country. That's what James Joyce, the novelist, said. It's the uncreated conscience of the race, and they create a soul, and that's where a lot of things that happen come from. And the thing about Dobbs is, look, it's not the end of abortion, and it's not going to be the end of abortion for a long time. It'll be more difficult to get an abortion in some of the red states, and some states will shut down abortion altogether, but you'll still be able to travel from state to state and get it. And there'll be debates, and laws will be changed and amended over time, maybe sometimes made more liberal, sometimes made tighter. And my hope, as I've said a million times, is for a cultural federalism where each of the states will have their own culture, their own moral culture, federalism, a cultural federalism, so that people move to states not just for economic reasons, but also for moral and cultural reasons. And that will create each state as an example. And each state, as an example, will affect the other states. And if states have a family place where you can't get abortions, but women in crisis pregnancies are well taken care of, maybe that will become a model for other states, and that model will spread, and eventually the whole country will become a pro-life country. But that's the way it has to work. It's not going to be by forcing it down people's throat like they tried to do to us, because obviously that can be overturned. What we want is for the culture to change so that people think that killing babies is a bad idea. And listen, that has happened before. When America was founded, there weren't any republics like this. And now every free nation is modeled to some extent on America. Even Britain has become more like America, though we learned from them. Now they've learned from us. And as I've mentioned, the slave state of the USSR, the Soviet Union, was called the USSR because it was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, because they had to pretend their slave states were republics because everybody knew that America worked best. And our republic is under a lot of pressure, but still, good ideas can spread just like bad ideas. Now listen, I think abortion is evil. I do. I think it's just an evil thing to kill a child, especially to kill a child, an unborn child, because it's going to make your career better or your life better or anything like that. It's, you had the sex, you had the baby, take care of the baby or give it to someone who will take care of it. But you just don't solve your problems by killing people. It's just not a good idea. But I understand there's going to be evil in the world. And this is the thing. I'm not complacent about this. I mean, I've shown you my heart. You know that it matters to me about the evil in the world. But evil institutions are going to be here. Every single person on earth lives in a country that has some evil institutions and, of course, some evil actions. And that's going to be true until Jesus comes and takes me bodily into heaven. And I laugh at all the rest of you who are left behind. And we always talk about fighting the good fight, and the fight is just beginning, and now that Roe is overturned, we begin the fight, and all that is true. But the fact is, we are going to be walking through a world with evil in it until we die. That is just the fact. And as hard as we fight, as much as, we always talk about, we have to fight, but the truth is, if you speak the truth and try to do right, the fight will come to you. Don't worry about it. Just speaking the truth will get you in a fight. Just living well will get you in a fight, because the wicked will seek you out. They will seek you out to harm you. And so that's what life looks like in this broken world. And no matter what we do, that is going to continue. So why does Dobbs matter at all? You might say, well, what if it's just going to continue? Why does Dobbs matter at all? And yes, of course, it's because it means we can fight. But it has to do with the culture for me. This is why I was so rocked by this decision that I couldn't even allow myself to hope for. Jeremy, the God King, and I had several discussions where we said we can't even think that this actually, even after it was leaked, that this actual decision will come down. And I didn't think it. I wasn't going to allow myself because I just couldn't have borne the disappointment. But this is why I was so rocked. There is a difference between being in a country where evil things happen, which is every country, and being in a country where the highest court in the land, the highest authority on the law, says you have a right to do that evil thing. When you say you have a right to do an evil thing, it means that you have dehumanized the people to whom you do that evil. Okay, that's a very different thing. They always make the comparison between Roe v. Wade and Dred Scott, and I think it's a totally valid comparison. That's the decision about 4 years before the Civil War that an African American was not an American and could not become an American and have the citizen rights of an American. So in other words, even if a slave escaped, he wasn't free because he wasn't an American. It basically dehumanized these people. So before that, you had this grave evil of slavery, and that is one thing, and that's a bad thing, but we walk in a world with evil in it. And on the after Dred Scott, you had a country that said, we have the right to hold slaves. These people are not fully people, and therefore we have a right to hold slaves. It was, until Roe, it was the worst decision of the Supreme Court, 7-2, just like Roe. And, on this Backstage Live we did at Ryman, I was jokingly remembering this video I did of Satan as running Planned Parenthood. And at the end of this, the God King Jeremy did his Oscar-worthy performance as a baby running away from Satan. And Satan is saying, come back here, you lump of cells, you. And the baby in Jeremy's great voice, it really is a great performance. Jeremy is going, of course I'm a human being. Look at me. Of course I'm a human being. Look at me. Those words are the foundation of the golden rule. It's the ability you have to turn to your neighbor and saying, look at me, I am you, I am one of us. We are all human beings. We are all here in the image of God. You cannot do to me what you're doing. When you declare that you have a right to hold a slave, a right to have an abortion, a right to tell a Jew to get out of town or to strip him of his rights, whatever it is that you do, whenever you have a right to evil, you are declaring the people that you do that to unhuman. They no longer have that right to say, I am a human being, look at me, the foundation of the golden rule. And when you deprive somebody of humanity, when the highest court in the land or the highest body in the land, legal body in the land, deprives a group of people of their humanity, you're no longer living in a country that is doing evil. You're living in a country that is evil. And this is what weighed on me so heavily. And my friends here at the Daily Wire, especially Ben and Jeremy and Knowles, they have heard me talk about this, and they've seen, I think, that how it was a burden to me that I did not think that this was a good country anymore, that this country was becoming a bad country, because all the stuff that you see that follows out of that logic of being able to dehumanize someone by right, take away their humanity by right, all of that was making us worse and worse. And that culture, the logic of that culture flows, all of the stuff, the shout your abortion stuff, have an abortion 10 minutes before a baby is born, leave a baby who survives abortion to starve, and all of that. It led to this stuff, this transgender madness of butchering children on the basis of a theory that has no scientific backing whatsoever and no logic. The political violence, where if somebody disagrees with you, you're allowed to blow up his house or torment his family or shout at him when he goes out to dinner. All of that stuff is the habit of dehumanization that grows out of a decision like Roe v. Wade. And that is the difference between this country that saddens me. It saddens me that to live in a world where evil exists. I have a tragic sense of life. I always have had. I have a sense of sorrow all the time about this, but that's different. That is the world God has given us to live in, and we have created through our fall and our sin. That's different than saying we have a right to that evil. Instead of we should be repenting for that evil. A country with abortion is different than a country with a right to an abortion. Just like a country with slavery, even though it has that evil in it, is different from a country with a right to slavery. I love this country. I love this country like people love their mothers. This country is my mother. This country shaped me in every way. It gave me, I'm a quirky, eccentric artist guy. It gave me a right to be that guy, to find Christ without saying, I'm, I started in this Jewish culture. I have to remain in this Jewish culture. To be fully the person I am. This country gave all those things to me. It is not something that I seized for myself. It's something generations of people died for. I want this country to have at least a chance to be good, to climb out of the degradation that a right to an abortion gave us. And now we have that chance. And every day we are less evil than we were. Right now we're a country again with evil in it, which is sad because the world is sad, but we are not an evil country anymore. It really, in the 1 week, in one moment, all of that changed. I felt it in the moment. I believe it as I sit here before you. This country is a better country than it was last week. It's no longer an evil country, essentially. And it means we can begin to climb back to being a good and great country and recover some of our humanity and some of our common sense. For more delicious Klavan-y goodness, like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.